Okay, so now we're getting into the basic strokes. The basic strokes are what you use to really create your lettering. In order to create beautiful hand lettering, you need to understand what makes up the letters. So it's kind of like learning how to write the alphabet all over again, but in this method. So um, you can use your pencil, like I said previously. I'm going to be using a brush pen just to kind of show you what I'm doing. So this first stroke is called the upstroke. Now, it says here, these are what you have in your printouts, so obviously be sure to print yours out on the 32-pound laser jet paper. If you don't want to buy a ream of yours, you can always have it printed out at like Kinko's or FedEx, and they print it out on this quality of paper, so you can at least get started that way if you don't want to jump into buying the ream of paper, but it's not that expensive. So anyways, what you want to do here is have light pressure as you start at the baseline and work your way up. Now, this here is the baseline. And what that is the line where all of your letters will primarily sit. So this is essentially where you start from. So what this X here is signifying is kind of the center of your letter. So this entire page is filled with upstrokes because it's very important to kind of create that, that muscle memory. So what you want to do is only have the lightest amount of pressure as you go from the bottom up. And it's very important to practice these because sometimes you could be a little bit jittery, or sometimes you could just put too much weight, or you might just do something like that. So it's important for not only to be able to have the correct weight, but also to just learn consistency and just learn how to be consistent in your spacing as well as the shape of it. And so, like I said earlier about posture, it's also very important to make sure and be aware of your posture so that way you don't kind of cramp yourself up. So right here, it's very, very important to really just use up this entire page and practice and practice and practice, just so that way it becomes second nature to you when you are going, anytime you're lettering up, it's always going to be a light stroke. Always, 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 always. The next stroke is, you guessed it, the downstroke. So the downstroke is obviously the opposite of that. So you have full pressure as you start at the top and work your way down. So here it's anytime you are coming down, you will need to be using full pressure. So this one, you should start from the top, full pressure, and then release. So you put full pressure all the way down. The whole time it's full pressure. So it's a thick line. And this one, I feel as though some people tend to forget and they'll come down with a thin stroke. So I think this is another one of the things that you need to also keep practicing. Practice consistency and practice the weight over and over and over. Just keep practicing. Okay? Now, the next stroke is the overturn. With this one, you have light pressure as you start at the baseline and work your way up. Then gradually add pressure at the top and work your way down. So what you're doing here is, at this point, you are transitioning from light pressure to full pressure. Now what you don't want to do is immediately go from light to full, because then you'll have like a really kind of sharp look. You want to have it be gradual, like this. Up, and then here at this point is when you start to slowly increase pressure until you're at full pressure right about here. So here is where you have slow increase, and here is where you have full pressure. Okay, so let's try that again. Up and down, up and down. And you'll see that I'm still going very slow because it's important to have control of your lettering. And one thing you want to do, because right here now these are drills, they are not actually getting into hand lettering, you want to make sure that you keep the shape consistent. I've had students in the past kind of create a tail or even in the back. And what you're doing is that's coming into something else. Right now you are practicing the overturn and you want to make sure that you're able to consistently keep it looking the way it should. And you also want to make sure that you are making all of these have the same amount of space in between the thin and the thick. So you don't want to start doing this, you don't want to start doing this. You want to just keep them all consistent. And now the opposite of an overturn is the underturn. Dun, dun, dun. It's literally the exact same thing, but reversed. So now what you're going to do is you're going to start with full pressure at the top and gradually release the pressure as you approach the baseline and then work your way up. So start with full pressure, then release and go up. So right about here is where you start to transition from the thick to the thin. So full pressure, transition up. Full pressure, release. Full pressure, release. And just keep doing that over and over and over until you feel comfortable. This one, because you're combining the two and starting with a thick stroke, I've noticed that some people have a harder transition going from thick to thin than they do from going from thin to thick. And I think a lot of that is because you're so focused on this that your pressure kind of continues on, and you do not want to do that. So be very hyper aware of when you release that pressure and bring it up. And just keep practicing. Put on some music and just chill.